Two women are seated on a stone bench against a landscape. The woman on the left has a laurel wreath in her dark hair, which she wears up. The woman on the right, with long flowing curls, is adorned with a bridal myrtle wreath. They are leaning towards one another, holding hands. The blonde woman, seen in sharp profile, seems to be whispering something to her companion, who faces the viewer. The women's expressions suggest that this is anything but a light conversation. The solemn clarity of the outlines and the cool metallic luster of the colors counteract any sense of warmth. The woman on the left seems to yield somewhat reluctantly to the other's intimacy. She is placed against an Italian landscape, a Romanesque monastery and a mountain range bathed in bluish light, reminiscent of the Sabine Mountains near Rome. The woman on the right, pressing gently against her companion while clasping her hand, is placed against a Gothic town with a towering church. The spire looks like that of St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna. The location of this meeting is hard to determine. However, the old and crumbling wall on the right suggests a ruined building. This is reinforced by the detail of the dislodged brick at the top and the bushy vegetation nestling there. Also, at the far left edge of the picture, a corner of the stone bench has fallen out. Johann Friedrich Overbeck, born the son of a mayor of Lübeck in 1789, the year of the French Revolution, completed this picture in Rome in 1828. This portrait of the artist by Karl Vogel von Vogelstein is dated October 22, 1814, 4 years after Overbeck had moved to Rome. On an easel in front of him is a study after Raphael's Madonna with St. John as a boy. In his hand, a sheet of paper which bears the signature of Albrecht Dürer and the date AD 1514. Overbeck had founded the Brotherhood of St. Luke, an artistic fraternity which sought to renew art from within. The German Albrecht Dürer and the Italian Raphael were seen as their guiding lights, both in their lives and in their art. While still a student at the Vienna Art Academy, Overbeck painted The Raising of Lazarus. Christ, the central figure dominating the canvas, is shown summoning the dead Lazarus back from the grave. At the left edge of the picture, outside the circle of startled men and women, Overbeck depicts himself and his student friend, Franz Pforr, enraptured by the miracle. A year later, in 1809, they founded the Brotherhood of St. Luke, together with 4 other painters. St. Luke is the patron of the medieval artists' guilds. The fraternity moved to Rome in 1810, the cradle of Christianity and art, to follow in the footsteps of the great artists they sought to emulate. They soon came to be known as the Nazarenes, not only because of their devotional works, but also because of their shoulder-length hair. They looked like the disciples of Jesus. In the year of their arrival in the Eternal City, Overbeck painted his friend in the style of the Italian Renaissance. Pforr was to die 2 years later from tuberculosis, and his death was a great blow to Overbeck. The half-figure of the young painter is framed in a Gothic arch. Inside the room, a blonde woman leans demurely over her knitting and reads a book. She represents Mary, Pforr's ideal bride. The lily symbolizes her purity. Through the arch, we look out onto the street of a German medieval town with towering church. In the far distance, we see the hazy outlines of steep Italian cliffs. Once again, Overbeck is combining emblems of the German and the Italian, a fusion of a beautiful past and an imperious present. Such self-conscious quotations of their influences are typical of the Nazarenes. The inclusion of a cat, alluding to a traditional German domestic scene, is contrasted with, as Overbeck once said, the yearning of the northerner for the south. 1 year later, in 1811, in a picture measuring only 35 by 32 centimeters, Franz Pforr painted his own version of the same theme. Two pointed arches divide the surface below the top of the upper arch into two rectangular spaces of equal size. The figure on the right is Mary. She is shown plaiting her blonde hair in her bedroom, like Faust's Gretchen. The bullseye windows, the alcove, and the objects within indicate that this is a German room at the time of Dürer. Pforr has painted his ideal bride, and at the same time his artistic ideal. On the left sits Sulamit, Overbeck's ideal figure, on a bench on a lawn of a southern garden surrounded by a wall. If Mary is represented as a delicate Gothic maiden, Sulamit is a worldly Italian Madonna in the spirit of the Renaissance. Overbeck himself is shown entering her garden. Behind the wall, the Italian landscape extends out to a distant mountain range. Pforr's small panel, Sulamit and Mary, is a personal dedication to Johann Friedrich Overbeck, and the small emblematic figure of his namesake, the evangelist John, can be seen perched between the pointed arches. Concurrently with Pforr's picture, Overbeck was beginning his own study of Sulamit and Mary, initially in the form of a large drawing or cartoon, in the way that Raphael used to prepare his pictures. But following Franz Pforr's death in 1812, he stopped working on it. It was as if the death of his close friend had also killed Overbeck's inspiration, and he only completed it 16 years later. Overbeck, however, now called the picture Italia and Germania. The ideal brides of the two friends had become symbols of the Italian and the Germanic. The northerner's yearning for the south was shown here to have been finally fulfilled. He explained how this came about in a letter. The idea of calling them Germania and Italia, he wrote, is explained by my peculiar perspective here, as a German living in Italy. I see it as my task to unify these two elements, which are in one sense incompatible. Here I imagine them in a beautiful, soulful friendship, and so you may simply call the picture Friendship. Another German living in Italy was Theodor Rebenitz, who was born in 1791. He was one of the circle of German artists working in Rome after 1816. Overbeck was his mentor and his teacher. Letters recently discovered suggest that the picture Italia and Germania in the gallery in Dresden, which we've been discussing so far, is a copy by Rebenitz of the original, which hangs in the Munich Neue Pinakothek. The Munich picture is the one you are looking at now. Overbeck sketched out a study for the joined hands of the two brides. It highlights his unique drawing style, which might be described as delicate precision. Rebenitz traced over this study as a meticulous preparation for his copy. It was practically an article of artistic faith for the Nazarenes that sensitive imitation was of greater value than invention. Overbeck was perhaps the best-known German artist internationally in the 19th century. Italia and Germania can be seen as a work of European reconciliation, the meeting of cultures in a spirit of hope, grounded on a centuries-old common history.